Does A&M have what it takes to win one game against a top 3 team in the country in the rivalry renewed for a trip to Atlanta? A lot of stakes in this game. Big rivalry returning. I don't have to tell you guys about that. I think that's pretty well documented. I think we all feel what that means. Today I want to talk about Texas A&M and a little bit about Texas. We'll kind of transition more to Texas talk in the next couple of videos. I'll have some Texas people jump on this channel and we'll get a good feel for their team. But today, where do the Aggies stand? Do they have what it takes to win this game? Because we're coming off of what's a very brutal loss versus Auburn. It's a really, really weird feeling we're kind of coming off of as Aggies. At least I've experienced this really weird feeling. Because that was a brutal loss. That was a loss where you could grasp victory. You could grasp basically a trip to Atlanta because we caught wind in the middle of that game that if you win that, you're very, very likely to make it to Atlanta no matter what happens this weekend. Now, that's not very fun. We're kind of glad there are stakes on this game. But to miss that opportunity, it hurt a lot. And to have so many opportunities in that game really, really stung. Now, we're saved by the fact that Oklahoma was able to beat Alabama. Ole Miss dropped a game to Florida. And all of a sudden, you're still alive. But how do we feel coming off of 2 road SEC losses where the side of the ball we held our hat on once, the defensive side, well, all of a sudden it's kind of failing us. So maybe your offense can pick up the slack a little bit, but as good as we feel about that unit, you're going up against one of the best defenses in the country, we think, this weekend. So there's a lot you have to look at for Texas A&M to really understand what you're getting into, because is this defense doomed to be what we saw the last 2 weeks? That's kind of the big question here. Versus South Carolina, it was the inability to tackle and then giving up a couple of big plays by lack of gap discipline. This week versus Auburn, you really didn't get a consistent pressure against Peyton Thorne, and the DBs got the ball thrown over their heads. So that stuff really can't all come back to light this week, or else you're going to see much of the same defensively. So today, let's talk about where A&M stands. We'll talk offense, then we'll talk defense. We'll go negatives, we'll go positives, and we'll kind of relate it lightly to Texas. We're going to look at that Auburn game as the most recent sample size, but we're kind of going to bring the whole season together into this one to talk about where we are right now, leading into a game where you're playing for all the marbles, and it's such a big one. I'll be there. I'm sure some of y'all will be there. If you're not there, you're going to be screaming from the couch. I'm kind of hoarse from watching the Auburn game right here where I'm sitting. That's just how we feel about a season where you have a lot riding on games. It's great to have that. That's a privilege to be playing games like this. So it's been a good year one, but it becomes a great year one with a win versus Texas. So guys, like and subscribe. Thank you for being here. I'll be going live tonight, Tuesday night, 7:30. Give you guys a chance to call in, chime in on the team, chime in on the game week, and then I'll drop another video relating Texas and their X's and O's and their players probably tomorrow, Wednesday, and we'll keep going live the rest of the week. We'll be live again Friday night. So thank you guys for being here. Let's get right into the defense. Unfortunately, what was once a ramp up, what was once a progression across the board, well, we've seen a little bit of regression in the last couple of games in the SEC. You haven't been able to tackle a quarterback. You haven't been able to impact games in a huge, huge way consistently defensively for a couple of games. Because you think about the beginning of the year, it wasn't great versus Notre Dame. It wasn't even great versus McNeese. But after that, we saw incremental improvements defensive line-wise, secondary-wise, linebacker-wise, every game. And it got better and better through the Missouri game, through the LSU game. Great pressure, great scheming in that game. And all of a sudden versus South Carolina, it wasn't necessarily the scheming or the generation of pressure or even the coverage for the most part that bit you. It was just the inability to tackle in that game. So that came up. And now versus Auburn, you really couldn't generate a pressure. And then you saw a major defensive back regression, but you also lost a couple of guys. Particularly, you lost Will Lee, and that had to have bit you in the butt. Forced you to kind of get out of your comfort zone defending the pass. And balls got over your head. You got jump balls thrown on you. Cam Coleman did his thing. Lambert Smith did his thing. Peyton Thorne was able to tee off because he didn't have guys in his face, and that was just a nightmare defensively. Now, you started 21-0 in that game. You were able to fight back, but after you tied the game up 21-21, I think you kind of relaxed a little bit. I think the defense didn't respond to their own success very well because that next drive after you tied the game up, they just spread you out and gashed you running up the middle over and over again, and they missed a field goal, but then you went 3-and-out offensively. They got the ball back. They scored. So defensive consistency, there seems to be a disconnect right now, and I don't know what it is. It could be the road environment where we just don't perform, because it's been the same story for about 3 years now with a lot of the similar players. This is a new coaching staff. This is a new team, and maybe that's not the case at all. But the two most recent road games have been pretty bad defensive games, and that's been very surprising. It's a defense we once held our hat on, like I was saying earlier. I will say this. This was the first game pretty much all year, or at least for a long time, you haven't generated pressure. Even versus South Carolina, you were able to find pressure. You just couldn't get players down. And I thought the DBs played well enough in that game. And it wasn't the most, dynamic passing attack that South Carolina brought us. But I think the DBs played fine in the game. They just didn't get pressure versus Auburn. And whatever the reason was, if you're able to at least go back to what you were doing versus South Carolina, the quarterback you're going up against this week in Quinn Ewers, he will go down. All you need is to get an arm on him. He's not the biggest, he's not the fastest, he's not the strongest. He's a great passer of the football. He has a great eyes and vision and mind for the game. He just doesn't have those physical running and evasive tools or strength tools that some of these other quarterbacks have. Even Peyton Thorne's a big guy with speed, and I thought we'd be able to get him down, but we couldn't even find a pressure consistently. I have a level of faith that once you come home in a game with the magnitude and size of this one, the rivalry, but also the opportunity to go to the SEC championship if you win, I believe in Elko's ability to scheme up the right defensive game plan to get pressure on Texas. Now, here's the thing. You are going up against the best offensive line you've seen all year. That O-line, top to bottom, will be better than LSU's, which was the second best you've seen. You found some pressure there, mostly manufactured, but eventually you broke through and got pressure with 4 there. But this should be a significant step above that. I think LSU's O-line was a little bit disappointing this year, and I think Texas has been pretty solid. And the one game you're going to look at for Texas is Georgia, and what they were able to do is show an extremely multiple defensive look at them, both secondary and front seven-wise. And the really, really minutia thing that they did, the really, really nitty-gritty thing they were doing was super, super late alignment changes. They were changing into their blitz looks with seconds before the play was about to be snapped. They got a beat on that snap count, and they were saving their shifts till really late, and that fouled up the Texas offensive line. Now, I think Elko can do something similarly, whether it's by that or whether it's by just showing very different looks, muddy pictures, show pressure here, bring pressure here, show pressure here, bring pressure from behind it from the safety. Stuff like that is what Elko's going to do this game. A lot of defensive coordinators do that. Every team does that. But Elko's been known to be really, really good at it. And we saw that versus LSU. We saw it versus Missouri. We're going to see it this game. It's just a matter of, can the defensive linemen be as disruptive as they once were in the season? Because in the running game, you gave up a lot, especially when it was even number blocking, 5-on-5, when they were doing that spread look. You were able to get pushed around a little bit in the run game defensive line-wise. It seemed like the D-line kind of got down on themselves in this game, and that can't happen. That's a group you're supposed to make your money on if you're Texas A&M. You can't get pushed around there. That's your strongest group talent-wise. I'm saying all this to say I do not believe this defense will be held down 3 games in a row. I have some level of faith that Elko will get us right in this game, but you really, really want to have Will Lee back healthy. That's very crucial against the diverse receiver talent that they have, tight end talent that they have. You have to be full go, because not only is Will Lee out of the game, you're having a ripple effect with your subs and all of that, your depth, and you're having players that are less reliable in the game, and you have less flexibility there. You need to be healthy for this one, and that's really out of our control. It's out of the team's control. It's a matter of how that thing heals up, whatever's going on with Will Lee. You really, really want your best defensive back, your best corner back anyway. So, yeah, safeties need to stop biting on play action. Give up a couple huge plays at that. That's actually been a consistent issue throughout the year. It dates back to the Florida game, biting up on play action. Teams are creating a lot of space, a lot of passing lanes by just faking handoffs against us. Need to be more disciplined there. Need to react more quickly once you realize it's a play action. Need to react correctly, like Dalton Brooks didn't on that deep post to, I think it was Cam Coleman, second drive of the game, where he was in cover 2 and he just bit up hard, latches onto the crosser, doesn't go cover his cover 2 zone. That stuff has to be cleaned up against Texas, because Quinn Ewers will pick you apart there if you're out of position. So that has been a consistent issue. It hasn't been every play action, but it's shown up at least sporadically throughout the year. So you're going to have to be on your game on that this game. You got jump balled a lot this game. Des Ricks got mossed. Javen Thomas, he was smart, I think, in some of his holds where he was getting beat. He had 2 or 3 defensive holdings, one of which wasn't called miraculously. That stuff is smart in the scenarios he was in. I don't know if Texas has the same jump ball threats that Auburn does. They have probably better route runners, a more seasoned unit. They have the young receiver Wingo can get some balls over you, but I think they're more of a route running, just not elite, veteran unit that can get stuff done on that front. I don't know if the jump ball threat is as strong with Texas, but that was a problem versus Auburn, so we have to be aware of that, and that's why you really want Will Lee back. All right, let's move to the offense. Yes, you're looking at regression defensively, and that was a very negative talking session right there. Of course, I'm ending that with the notion that I think Elko can get this defense right for a game because we've seen it right for most of the season. It's been the losses where it hasn't been. All those were bad defensive games. You gave up running yards. That was the commonality between the three. At least you gave up big gashes in the running game. And then, of course, Auburn was the first team to really totally dominate us passing the football. And I think a lot of that had to do with pass rush. But I'm ending that with the note that I think Elko can get it right for a game now with everything on the line, scheming it up if you're healthy. If you're going to talk about positives on the team, I think the offense is a really big positive right now. Now, I'm not here to say the offense is perfect. I'm not here to say you're going to hang 40 on this elite Texas defense. That's not what I'm saying. What I want to start with is by saying I think we really have a quarterback you're comfortable building around in Marcel Reed. By no means is he perfect, but every game, as he builds experience, confidence, film room equity, you can see things starting to come together for him because every game it's getting incrementally better. He led an 80-yard go-ahead touchdown drive with about 5 minutes left in the game with timely scrambles, timely third down throws, and he started that with a 2nd and 23 after an intentional grounding. That's an example of what you can look like with Marcel Reed. Just a lot of conviction in his scrambles, very decisive throws. That's where he needs to be operating at because when you see that out of Marcel Reed, you see a future star player. He started to understand what defenses are starting to take away from him. Not consistently yet, but you're seeing it. You're seeing him understand that, when you have a 3-man rush, it's okay to sit in that pocket and trust offensive line. But you're also seeing him rush out of those and try to scramble a little bit too quickly. But you're seeing that come together more. It's not a full... It's not like he's turning this big full page and it's all done. You're seeing him creep up in these regards. I think where he's really working right now is increasing that processing speed, specifically under the blitz. I think we're still seeing him not confident delivering balls under immense pressure. Got a 6-man blitz in that game where you had Bussey on a curl, open for a first down. Reed kind of hesitates, doesn't hit him right on his break, kind of scrambles a little bit before he throws that ball. Doesn't get it there in time, he's inaccurate. I think it's just a little give or take with a young quarterback right now, but you're seeing it come together at times. When you have a spy allocated to you, like Reed had in this game pretty much the whole time, like he will in the Texas game the whole time, you have a numbers advantage. And you can manipulate that spy for a first down, like we saw Reed do at times in the game versus Auburn. But we also saw him with a 3-man front and a spy, allocating that defensive end as a spy instead of rushing him. Well, we saw Reed try to scramble right at that at times. So it's just putting things together, but we're seeing the pieces kind of out there. It's just not every play yet. And when it is every play, you get that 80-yard touchdown drive. You get these flashes of greatness that we get from Reed now. He's a young player. He has so many tools in his game, and it all just needs to come together. Unfortunately, I think his improvement really is breathing life into this receiver room that I will still say gets a lot of bad flack, worse than they deserve, because what you were dealing with on this team is massive, massive quarterback turnover. Because, again, we'll talk about the quarterback arc here. It's a year one system, first of all, learning the playbook, learning the terminology, learning consistency in your plays. Second of all, you've had Connor Wigman as your one through the developmental stages of this process in spring, in fall camp, only having that shoulder injury to throw him out, and then having Marcel Reed, who they did trust, who did get some work with the ones, but a minimal proportion compared to what Connor had with the ones, thrust into the game versus Florida, working from behind there. Then Connor's healthy again. You're back to the status quo. You have that Missouri game, but then we see some inconsistency from Connor. Maybe a little bit a loss of confidence from Connor for multiple reasons, including the injury. And then you get Reed back in the game. And Reed's the starter from that LSU game halfway through forward. And I think now you're seeing the pieces start to fit together. There's a little bit of trust and chemistry forming between Reed and his receivers now. You're seeing him, maybe not consistently, but very often hitting receivers on their breaks, hitting the soft spots of zones, hitting receivers in the hands, and I think we saw that this game more than ever. And I think you have a very serviceable quad of receivers right now. You have Jade and Noah as your big body threats. Jade with the ability to push people around and, have a very physical touchdown in overtime last game. Or Noah's ability to maintain balance when you have people diving at your legs on a slant and go get a 73-yard touchdown, or maybe more impressively, just mossing people in the red zone, something we've always known he can do but needed the quarterback to get him the ball. And Reed did that this game. Reed gave him that ball in a perfect window to go up and get it over a smaller defender. And yes, Texas has an elite secondary, but Noah has uncoachable size, very strong hands, very good balance, really good hand fighter. Those are things that no skill set can fully overcome, though they can get you a long way. But I want to see those guys get targeted on Barron, on Muhammad this game. At least try it. Bussey and Jabri have become great safety valves for Marcel Reed. These guys get open with quickness and speed, crossing routes, zigs, inside stuff. There's a lot of way those two guys can get open. And now we're seeing Bussey with the ability to get more handoffs and even get snaps in the game. So I think that what this offense wants to be now that you've lost Le'Veon Moss is just a very, very diverse unit. A unit where everyone can touch the ball in a lot of different ways. A unit where you're running end-around RPOs to Bussey, to Barber, even to Noah. Not Noah. You ran it to Jabri. Oh, my goodness. Names. A lot of names going around here. To Jade. You can do this with a lot of players. And you have to be willing to do this with a lot of players to remove any kind of predictability from your offense. And that's kind of what they're doing. They're motioning Bussey into the backfield. They're starting Bussey in the backfield now. Bussey can get handoffs. Bussey can motion out of the backfield and go into a receiver look, into a slot look. Bussey can get snaps now. You're running zone read in so many different ways. You're running RPO to tight ends off of zone read. You're running RPO to receivers off of zone read. And yes, Marcel still needs to work on that processing and reading those plays on the fly, but I think that's getting better and better every game. We've seen that over the last few games. I'm loving the diversity of this offense right now, and it's coming at a really good time. Now, whether it's too late, whether you have enough time to get it going against the best defense you will have seen probably since Notre Dame, if not better than them, that's a question that remains to be answered. Let's talk about the offensive line real quick. I thought they were excellent in protection against Auburn. Only a couple of busts. Early in the game, you had Crown over. He was caught still diagnosing the blitz when the play snapped, and he was a step behind. He got beat on an early third down. Forced us to miss a field goal, I think, and that was unfortunate. But outside of plays like that, maybe one or two bad busts in protection in the game, they weren't really bringing the house to consistently, and when they did, maybe you didn't perfectly pick it up, but you definitely slowed blitz down. I think the O-line has been pretty solid at protection the whole year, outside of a couple of things versus South Carolina where you're missing Basantis there, but protection's been great, and it just comes down to Marcel Reed learning to trust it a little bit more and learning to stand in there and just hit your guys, because this O-line will give you time. You can sit in there and have a picnic, man, if they're bringing 3 and they're spying 1. Let it happen. Let it happen. Now, as good as they were in the pass game, in the run blocking world, they weren't as good. Now, we don't get the best view. The general public doesn't get the all 11 view. We don't get the end zone view to see the splits and the assignments and everything. From what I could tell, I felt like the O-line was pretty assignment sound, run blocking, getting to the next level. I just felt like they got out physicaled a lot in the running game this game. I felt like they got pushed back. I felt like they couldn't get movement. I felt like that D-line really compressed our running lanes in the game. And I felt like Amari, where he saw daylight, it just evaporated really quickly in the game. And it showed. You averaged 3.2 yards rushing, and I think the running game was really salvaged by Marcel scrambling. But I think you kind of got out physical running the football a little bit in the run blocking game. Hopefully getting Basantis back makes a big difference there, because he is a beast. He's a physical specimen. He can move bodies, and that, it'll help the center. It'll help the left tackle out. It'll help them both with their combos. It'll help them both with trust and communication, because he's been there longer. And he should be a full go versus Texas. That should be there, and hopefully that helps. And talking about the running back, Amari can only do so much alone. I mean, he's going to get tired over games. It's going to happen, and he's learning how to be an every down back. He's at least very consistent in short yard conversions right now, but he's not able to bust a lot of long runs. And again, Auburn's a really good run stopping team. They were third in the conference in stopping the run. So, yeah, that was a tough assignment to begin with, and it doesn't get any easier next week. But getting Basantis back, hopefully getting another level of comfort within the offense for Amari, for this whole offense, helps that running game open up. And I thought the offense was good overall, outside of just not having a consistent running game. And I thought that came down to getting out physical. So, talking about all that, let's bring it all together. I want to compliment Colin Klein. I see criticisms of Colin Klein after this game. How? That was by far his best play calling game of the season. Think about the hand he's dealt. Backup left guard, backup center, losing your heart and soul player in Le'Veon Moss, all the quarterback shuffle, and having to rebuild this thing late in the season in a year one where you're already playing from behind. To have such a diverse and well-shared look in this game to make up that ground was so impressive. Best play calling game of the season. You replaced Moss with committee. I'm going to re-go through all of it one more time concisely. We were jumping around. We saw standard zone reads. We saw end-around zone reads to 3 or 4 different players. We saw end-around zone reads into a tight end RPO, which is basically like a triple option. We saw the same thing into a wide receiver RPO, although Reed gave the handoff on that, so we didn't get to see the RPO side of that zone read. We saw a play action into a tight end screen. We got the wild Bussy with a run for Bussy. We got the wild Bussy with a reverse pass. Unfortunately, Amari dropped that ball, but it was a great play. We saw Marcel with the confidence and knowledge that this offensive staff and Colin Klein have instilled in him to call out protections, to call out blitzers, to call Mike, to do all these things at the line, to audible plays, some of which were coming after the 15-second comms turned off. We saw a lot of poise before the snap by Marcel. Maybe he didn't always make the right call, like that option to the short side of the field in overtime. But we saw a lot of good stuff in Marcel's ability to diagnose and call. And this was all without a consistent running game and without Le'Veon Moss. Hats off to Colin Klein. We get to see the next evolution, and we get to see the no-holds-bar version of it this week, where you're going into the depths and crevices of that playbook and pulling everything out. And anything else you want to add after that, if you're able to make the SEC championship, you're going to have to install that the next week, because they're throwing the kitchen sink at this game. You're going to see everything that Colin Klein has to offer versus Texas. Now, you're going to have to stay on schedule to see some of this stuff. You can't be getting blown backwards on first and second down. Otherwise, Colin Klein cannot get into his bag. That's what we saw versus South Carolina. Got to win early downs, and you did that at times this game, and you were able to really get into your bag, and that was so promising. But was it too late? Now let's quickly go through some offensive negatives. That was my offensive positive spiel right there. I was all over the place. Let's hone it in, talk negatives. Again, year one system, finding itself late in a season. You're playing from behind here. You're far from a finished product, and you still have a very young quarterback who only has 6 starts under his belt. Is that enough this game? You're going to have to still deal with inconsistencies with this offense, in particular Marcel Reed, like we've been detailing this whole time. Will that bite you in the butt in a game versus Texas? But he can also make game-changing plays and have game-changing moments or drives, like we also went through in that positive spiel. So we'll see. You have to find consistency running the football versus Texas, because the front 7 you're playing this week is probably better than the one you just played last week. Maybe not significantly, but at least marginally better than what Auburn did. Auburn has a really good front 7, man. Look at their stats throughout the year. They've been solid all year, just underrated. You don't know the names. You know the names of Texas. They're a media darling. You know your Simmonses. You know your Hills. You know all your guys there. You know the names. You don't know them at Auburn. A little bit of a step up regardless this week. So hopefully getting Basantis back, full go, makes a difference. Hopefully learning life without Le'Veon, several weeks removed now, is a little bit of a boost to that running attack. And you're going to really just have to limit mistakes. 3 minutes to go in the game. You get the ball back. You have a 3-point lead. Auburn has 1 timeout. You drop a snap on first down, lose 6. You go 3 and out. You give them the ball right back. And then you give up chunks defensively. We'll get into defensive talk now. Unclutched there. Unable to respond once again defensively. That was an issue this game. Unable to respond to moments in the game. Have a good moment, but then give up a lot defensively. You did that there as well. A couple of big drops in the game. Theo had a big drop. I think you were able to still score on that drive thanks to a flag, I believe. Could be wrong. But then Amari had the big drop, which was unfortunate. And by the way, if you're out here trashing these guys, particularly Amari, you are not helping the situation. We need to be picking these guys up. These are our Aggie brothers, man. They understand what just happened. They feel the loss like you do, and they feel the responsibility of that loss unlike you do. So if you're one of those guys that was trashing Amari, that's bullshit. Pick these guys up. They feel enough negative vibes from actually doing the action themselves. It's our job to pick these guys up. But you got to limit these mistakes. You got a couple of alignment issues receiver-wise, and one of those was debatable with Jade. But we've seen a lot of inconsistency aligning or late aligning, forcing to call timeouts by the receiver group specifically. So just clean up mistakes, man. Those are going to come to bite you in a bigger game. Yeah, you got to clean that stuff up. And this is the biggest thing. This goes for both offense and defense in the negative department. You got to start freaking games better, man. You got to come out the chutes ready to go. 2 games in a row where you can confidently say that bad stops might have been the biggest factor. Bad starts to games, slow starts to games were probably the biggest factor in losing 2 games in a row. What's the disconnect here? This wasn't a problem early in the year. We were a great starting team early in the year. Offensively, specifically with those scripted plays, I think the first 6 or 7 games of the year you scored on your opening drive. Where'd that go? And what's happening defensively to start these games where you're just getting blown up? You're just getting beat. You cannot start slow versus Texas. You have a great advantage in this game, and that's Kyle Field. If you give Texas a 21-0 start to that game, that could snowball because that's a better team than Auburn. That's a better team than South Carolina. And you want them to quiet the crowd early? That's a problem. You have to start these freaking games with full conviction, full tilt, full go, full focus. I feel like I'm talking to the team right now, but I'm talking to you guys passionately. That's what we got to see, guys. That's what we got to see. And that's about where we are as Aggies right now. Downward tilt defensively. You're coming off of a downward tilt offensively after losing Moss, but I feel like you've rebounded nicely. What's the next step? Is it too late? I like the trends. Can Marcel take that next step this week? It's a really good defense you're going up against, but I do like the spot this offense is in. And if you're talking optimistically defensively, you're going home. And Elko can scheme up one good game against one of the best scheme mans in the country in Sarkisian. So yeah, it's all up to this. It's all down to this. The next video, we're going to talk about that game specifically. We're going to get into matchups. We're going to get into keys to the game for both sides, and I'll give you my official score prediction. We'll bring a Longhorn into the channel, someone I know, to talk more about Texas, and we'll get the good scouting report for them. I'll be going live tonight, 7:30. Give you guys a chance to call in, reflect on the team this point in the year, just kind of talk about where we're at. You can talk about the next game if you want. You can talk about whatever the hell you want. And then Friday, we'll go live one last time for the regular season, 7:30 Friday night, and then we'll try to watch some of the games after we do the call-in show because there's going to be a lot of good games Friday night. Guys, like and subscribe. Thank you for being here. Probably a longer video today, but this is it. This is everything. Thanks for watching. Gig 'em.